The country's new budget for the next year will be presented this evening at 6 p.m. The Egrant Inquiry called for Carl Cini, Maria Efimova and Johnathan Ferris to be investigated for perjury. Malta's prison director files libel case after new abuse claims. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Yannick, with me is Johnathan, Cilia, and we have a great episode for you today, starting with the main news of the day, the budget.
Big day has arrived for Malta and Gozo. Malta's budget for 2022 is to be presented this evening. Now it's a very, very big day, It's Finance Minister Clyde Caruana's first budget, and it's going to be the last budget of this administration. Now, you've probably seen photos online on Facebook of the minister with the famous briefcase with the logo. That means budget time is officially here. Now, in this evening at 6 o'clock, the budget will be presented and it will go on for a while. So definitely stay tuned on lovinmalta.com. We're going to have analysis of all the policies. We're going to break it down by theme. Right now, details are still up in the air. We're hearing rumors. It seems like there will be some interesting environmental proposals, something to do with the South. There seems to be some new schemes for employees as well. I mean, it makes sense seeing as the government just released, a new employment policy, and there seems to be something to do with transport as well. But definitely stay tuned this evening on lovinmalta.com to see what the new policies will be. Yannick, are you excited for the budget?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very important exercise and kind of underpins a lot of the government's work for the whole year. So it's at least I'm the type that enjoys it. We'll see. On to our next story. The Egrant Inquiry has called for next year BT's Carl Cini, whistleblower Maria Efimova, and former FIU investigator Johnathan Ferris to be investigated for perjury. If you remember, the company Egrant was revealed in the Panama Papers and was the subject of an inquiry which lasted over a year and a half, which sought to determine whether or not the allegations that the company was linked to Joseph Muscat and his wife were true. The inquiry did not prove any links between Muscat and the company, though it did not identify who the company belonged to. In the conclusions to the inquiry, the magistrate made recommendations for a number of individuals to be investigated for perjury. Today, former FIU Inspector Johnathan Ferris was charged in court, and during cross-examination, one of the inspectors who took part in the investigation was asked whether there were others who had been who were to be investigated, and he revealed that Maria Efimova and Carl Cini had both been identified by the magistrate as required for an investigation. It seems that Cini, a statement was taken from Cini. However, Maria Efimova has not been spoken to because she is not in Malta, and the European arrest warrant for her return has been denied by Cyprus. The case is set to continue, I guess, but we'll see how it develops. One of these very old cases that don't appear to go away.
Absolutely, Yannick. And talking about court, and moving on to the next story, the prison director, Alex Dully, has officially filed a libel suit against a former guard that works in Cordine, or worked in Cordine, who's kind of revealed some of the abusive incidents that he's alleging that took place inside the prison. So prison director Alex Dully, along with his assistant Randall Spiteri, has filed a libel case against the former guard Emmanuel Kassar, as well as the media house that he spoke to reveal these revelations, which was Illum. Now, if you missed the story, Kassar came forward with, in my opinion, two quite shocking incidents that he's alleging happened and that he saw himself. The incidents was, the first one was when apparently Alex Dully allegedly placed a gun in a prisoner's mouth and told him, quote, "If you're not going to behave, I will drop this on you." And the second incident refers to when a number of migrants were brought to the prison and were allegedly taken to the back, stripped, and sprayed with water from a hose pipe. Now, it seems that Dully is denying this, and he's now proceeding to take the person who said this to court. Now, let's be very, very clear. The prison has been under a lot of heat for a few months now. There's been a suicide, a very, very tragic suicide, a couple of weeks, if not a month or two back. There have been a number of deaths over the last few years. More and more people are coming out with stories, though I have to say that, we do seem to need a bit more evidence, though I can imagine how hard it is to collect evidence if you're a prisoner or a guard, apart from, trying to smuggle in a mobile and trying to film what you can see there. However, it seems that Daly has now finally gotten enough of what's being said about him and is at least taking this former guard to court.
Yeah, I mean, we do have an inquiry currently underway that hopefully will shed some light on what happens inside prison. Though I must say that we keep hearing the accusation after accusation, yet we're still no closer to actually having a confirmation of what is actually happening inside prison. So one would think that as a country we could get to the bottom of it sooner. Hopefully the inquiry will shed some light on what's going on. Another point I'd like to raise is that I find it a bit excessive for the paper to also be sued. At the end of the day, the paper has met with someone, has spoken with someone who worked there, who was justified in kind of accepting what they were saying. So while I get him suing the person who spoke out for libel, I find that the paper is a bit excessive. But
you're making a very, very good point. So obviously, Lovin Malta, we had gained access to prison and interviewed Alex Daly about a year and a half ago in his first filmed interview in his office. It was very hard to get that interview. We were not allowed to take in our own equipment. We had to use prison equipment. And a few months after that, he had been interviewed by Mark Lawrence, right, on Lerba Fossil Jimma, which is when he said the crazy statement that, what was it? Roughly, he had said that the worst thing a journalist can face is
falling over a step
or tripping over a step. Now, obviously, we don't have to remind you that multi-journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia was blown up in 2017 for her work. So that line really landed very badly, but it goes to show kind of maybe how Alex Daly does see the media, how he sees journalists. So as wrong as he is to probably take a loon to court, I'm not surprised that he did, seeing as
we'll see.
That's his approach to the journalists.
We'll see how the case turns out. So on to our next story. The feedback, the recently proposed cannabis reform has been overwhelmingly positive. High-ranking government sources have told Lovin Malta. The comments come after the bill, which was presented in Parliament last week, was criticised by a group of organisations, mainly religious organisations, who criticised the bill, which they argued would lead to a culture of drug use in Malta, as long as many other doom and gloom scenarios. A high-ranking government source who spoke with Lovin Malta basically said that the government had undertaken a very, very broad consultation in drawing up the proposals and had, in fact, had a long public consultation process during which 150 submissions were received. They said, the response was overwhelmingly positive from organizations from a very broad cross-section of Maltese society. They did point out that one concern kept coming up during the consultation, namely how the cannabis was to be sourced. The reform that we've seen presented now seems to have addressed that issue by legislating and allowing for cannabis associations to operate, in which people will be able to collectively grow and distribute cannabis among their members. In fact, the cannabis lobby group Relief has criticized these 16 NGOs, which is accused of instilling fear rather than promising education on the issue. What do you think?
It's really interesting to see, 16 organizations come out and say that the feedback was overwhelmingly critical, just for the government to come out and say, actually, no, not at all. It was actually very positive. So I'm very interested to see where these organizations got their info from. Was it just the people that they spoke to? But on a larger scale, I am happy to see that kind of we are having a healthy, respectful, robust debate on cannabis legalization in Malta. I do want to kind of communicate to these groups that, there seems to be a misunderstanding about why Malta needs to legalize cannabis. I don't think it's to, have people accessing cannabis willy-nilly as they do for alcohol or for tobacco. I think it's more of a criminal justice scenario. Right now, as it is, you have 30, 40,000 regular cannabis users who are forced to go to the black market on a regular occasion, are forced to deal with dealers, pushers who tell them, you like this cannabis, how about you try cocaine next time? How about you try heroin next time? This is something that, we should be proactively trying to stop if we want to tackle drug abuse, especially hard drug abuse in Malta. So I do really want to communicate with these groups that, they need to think twice when they criticize legalization, because what, do they want to continue sending people to prison? We've had cases like Daniel Holmes, a father who was sent to prison for nearly a decade for growing some cannabis in his house. And if you read the book that Lovin Malta published about the reasons why he started growing his own cannabis, it's because he was beaten up and robbed by a drug dealer, a black market dealer in Malta. So, I think the facts kind of speak for themselves. That said, it is great to see these organizations contribute to the discussion, and I do hope that, moving forward, they continue to contribute to the discussion. Moving on to the final story for today. Did you watch X Factor yesterday? Because there were a number of, I assume that was a no, there were a number of interesting, singers, songwriters that that appeared, that auditioned, and one of them is someone that we've spoken about before. Emily Jones is a Instagram model and OnlyFans model who has about 250,000 followers on her platforms, which is quite impressive actually. And she actually auditioned for X Factor Malta, taking on a very difficult song, Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, which is, quite a ballsy song to start off with. But, she appeared on X Factor and she said, listen, I'm only here to honor my mom. Her mother is currently in hospital fighting a brain tumor. And she explained that, listen, my mom's always been my absolute biggest supporter when it comes to music, singing, and unfortunately, she's really unwell at the moment. So she wanted to dedicate the song to her mother, which I think is really, really sweet of her. She got 3 yeses from the judges and 1 no from Howard Keith, who said that he felt her voice needed to show a bit more emotion. But the 31-year-old singer has passed through and now will be going on to the next round. So a bit of an interesting person to be on X Factor. Like I said, 250,000 followers. We've covered her story just this week, and she was actually interviewed by the Daily Star in the UK because she's also fighting for to raise awareness for invisible illnesses such as fibromyalgia. So quite an interesting person to be on X Factor Malta this year.
Yeah, and it's always good to see someone using a platform for good, good initiatives, good causes. It's also interesting to see that there seems to be quite some talent on X Factor. Like we always used to talk about whether there'd be enough people signing up for it, but it seems that so far so good.
Absolutely.
So that's it from us for tonight. Make sure you follow the latest updates from the budget. It's all going to be happening on lovinmalta.com, so stay tuned and follow us there. Thank you very much for following. Have an evening full of love.